Okay, good morning. My name's Kate McLinton. I am a Senior Program Manager at AusAID. I'd like to welcome you all to the start of the second day of the 2013 Indonesia Update. It's good to see so many of you have actually sacrificed that extra hour of sleep this morning to come for the first session. The first session will be on local level perspectives. First up, we have Daju Resosudarmo, and co-authoring is Pak Ngakan Putu, and they will be talking about managing fragile ecologies, a regional perspective. Ibu Daju is a scientist for CIFOR, which is the Center for International Forestry Research, and Pak Oka is a professor of forest ecology at Hasanuddin University in Makassar. Silakan Ibu.
Good morning. Thank you, Kate, for introducing myself and my co-author. And thank you to Hal Hill, the organizer, for inviting me to this conference. Actually, I was here 11 years ago in the 2002 update, also presenting the same issues. Now I'm back talking about the same issues. Let's see what has happened in the past 11 years. Yesterday, we have heard a lot of speakers talking about the Indonesian economics and Indonesian politics. We have not heard, however, the elements that drive the politics and that economics. Today, I will try to present some of the important issues about natural resource management and governance. The most important element that has driven the economics and politics of Indonesia. So the outline today will be brief overview of early decentralization of natural resources and land allocation. And then I'll speed up to review the major regulations affecting the dynamics of decentralization concerning forest and land use allocation. And then a little bit about the trend and pattern of natural resources and land use decisions, some other land-related issues, and finally, the new initiatives related to forest and land. So it has been 12 years in the making. The authority of natural resources and the land use, land allocation have been devolved to local governments. We want to know how has decentralization progressed since the early years of decentralization. How has this dynamic affected the outcome of natural resource management? I'm presenting using through the forestry lens. Now, why forestry? Arguably, forestry has dimmed over the past years. Forestry was in its peak in the 1970s, 80s, and still in the 1990s. However, it is very significant in the sense that 70% of Indonesia's land base, so about 120 million hectares of the 180 million hectares, is under the purview of the Ministry of Forestry, which is called the Kawasan Hutan, the forest estate or forest zone. Now, much of the natural resources, the minerals, are found in these forest lands. And forest, this Kawasan Hutan is actually a source for land agricultural expansion. It is certainly a source of livelihood. A lot of people live in forested areas. It is a source of income, and as we see later, it is a source of power among levels of governments. Recently, the government has also committed itself to reducing emissions from for climate change, and about 80% of that, the target is from land use chains and forestry, not from transportation, not from the energy sector. So what has been the argument for decentralization of natural resources? The basic tenet is that locals know best. So reducing the distance between decision makers and those affected will address local conditions and needs. What has happened? In the early years of decentralization from 2000 until 2003, 2004, there was still uncertainty in the legal framework, where local governments used to refer to the regulations that were only beneficial to them. There was emphasis on locally generated revenues. There was ostensibly emphasis on local livelihood. There was this Putra Daerah issue. A lot of local government officials were appointed based on the fact that they were Putra Daerah and not based on their capacity. There was vertical tension and incoherence of decisions clearly reflected in the forestry sector. And the outcome was indiscriminate decisions over land use, clearly reflected in the forestry sector during the early heydays of decentralization. Thousands of 100-hectare forest licenses were issued by Bupati's local government. So just to speed up, but to give you a context, there are several laws that pertain to how forest land, the kawasan hutan, is managed. The two important ones, of course, is the agrarian law. It's old, it's 1960, and then the forestry law, 1999. And of course, the decentralization laws, but there are three other important laws that influence how the forest sector and kawasan hutan is managed. It's the agricultural plantation law, the Undang-Undang Perkebunan, 2004, the special planning law, the new one, the 2007, special planning, and the mineral and coal law, 2009. Recently, the target of the greenhouse gas emission reduction is also pertinent to the management of this area, and also the impress on moratorium, the moratorium of the conversion of kawasan hutan and peatlands, which will prevail until 2015, May 2015. Now, what is the major issue? The first one is the definition and the scope of kawasan hutan. The kawasan hutan was designated in about 1982. It's called Tata Guna Hutan Kesepakatan, so by consensus. At the time, the technology was not as advanced as now, so the map drawn was 1 to 500,000. That's the scale. So basically, it's just what do you call it? It doesn't show the details of the kawasan hutan. So this is very important because the area of kawasan hutan means that all other non-forest uses, the kawasan hutan need to be converted first to non-forest, to be allocated for non-forest uses. And this also has implications on the tenure status of land, so that 70% of the land base, Indonesian land base, is state land. This has also implications on the spatial planning of provinces and district governments, of provinces and districts. Now, another important one is the maps and spatial planning. According to the Spatial Planning Law 2007, all jurisdictions, that's provinces and districts, have to complete their spatial plans through PERDA, local regulations, 2 years after the law was enacted. That means in 2009. But until now, many provinces, especially provinces with a lot of kawasan hutan, including Aceh, including Papua, including Central, West, and East Kalimantan, they don't have a PERDA, Tata Ruang, Spatial Planning Law. Now, Riau, for instance, they are basing all their developments on a 1994 PERDA, 1994. That's a long time ago. So a lot of things have changed since then. Central Kalimantan is basing their development on Tata Ruang 2003, which has not been endorsed by the Ministry of Forestry. So that actually gives you some of the complicated issues of land-based development in the regions. Now, the forest estate, this kawasan hutan, is now being challenged, has been challenged actually by 5 district heads in Central Kalimantan, because all of their development, all their licenses issued are actually illegal if we refer to the kawasan hutan as designated by the Ministry of Forestry and not by the Tata Ruang Spatial Plan that they have, the 2003 that they have. To make matters worse, there are actually different maps floating around both in the regions and at the national level. Different ministries have different maps that refer to. The Ministry of Forestry has a different map. The Ministry of in Energy and Minerals have one map. The Ministry of Agriculture have different maps. So, and also, this also goes all the way down to the provinces and to the district level. So the maps that the Bupatis hold are different than the maps that the provinces hold. So unclear status and tenure of land leads to, of course, business uncertainty. That's economics. It leads to speculation, and it leads to conflicts. For instance, how is the MP3E, MP3EI, going to be implemented if the status of the lands are not clear? So despite all these problems, everybody knows that this is a problem, but the spatial planning process has been sluggish. The president has put it as a priority. At one point, he was menggebrak meja in one of the cabinet meetings and saying, why hasn't this issue been resolved? Okay, so this is the progress as of March 2013. Of the 33 provinces, there were only a lot of provinces have not completed their spatial plans, and the bottleneck is where the circles are in the Ministry of Forestry. So basically reconciling the Ministry of Forestry's maps with the draft of the spatial plans suggested by the districts and the provincial governments. So now we're looking at what is really happening at within these areas. Of course, the first one is logging, timber concessions. What was known before as HPH, now IUPHHK. Nature forest concessions have declined way compared to before, but now the Ministry of Forestry is focused on timber plantations. However, a lot of developments that pertain to forest kawasan hutan is actually agriculture establishment, the green gold, oil palm, for instance, and mining, notably coal and others in many areas. So what are the real issues? There are two major issues. The first is the management of licensing. The second is the management of lands under these licenses. There have been proliferation of licenses in the agricultural sector and in the mining sectors that trespass the kawasan hutan as they are designated by the Ministry of Forestry. In mining, there is some vertical relationship between the local government and the central government. So there is a little bit of monitoring because of the revenues, the sharing of revenues. But in the agriculture sector, there is no vertical relationship whatsoever. So the Ministry of Agriculture does not know, for instance, how much land has been attributed to oil palm or whatever else. There is no relationship whatsoever. There is no accountability, vertical accountability mechanism whatsoever. So if we ask the Ministry of Agriculture, how many areas exactly in Central Kalimantan, sorry, you have to go there to find out. The second issue is the management of lands once these licenses are given. So lands, the license is cheap, I think 1 hectare is about 3 million. So a lot of rich companies can acquire hundreds and thousands of lands. Now the ministry, now the central government is talking about restricting the area. However, there are land banks, so a lot of the lands are idle. In addition, environmental assessment or environmental evaluation is not being implemented well. Although we have a strict environmental law in 2009, however, the Ministry of Environment, the one that is responsible for that, has no capacity to monitor these. So I'll show you some of the pictures. This is logging of natural forests in East Kalimantan in the district of Berau. There are still big logs out there. This is acacia plantation in Kutim, Kutai Timur in East Kalimantan to supply a local pulp mill over there. This is the green gold, the nursery of the green gold in Central Kalimantan. This is the green gold bunches in West Kalimantan, in Ketapang. Just to show you the trend of oil palm in Indonesia for the past 5 years. Everything goes up, both the area and the production, and the blue line is the loan, the credit, the bank loan that has supported this development. This is illegal logging and smallholder encroachment in Southeast Sulawesi. So it starts with small illegal logging, and then opening of a patch of land. This is a protected area, Hutan Lindung, the bald spot there is encroachment, small encroachment. And then this is progressive encroachment. This is what it will look like when the encroachment is progressing. Now, so far, mining, the Ministry of Forestry has issued lease use permits over about 3 million hectares. And so far, about 5.9 million hectares has been released for other uses by the Ministry of Forestry. So taken out from the kawasan hutan. This is a picture of coal mining in East Kalimantan, in Berau. It's open land. And this is the trend of mining, yeah? All up, going up, going up. And although we must understand that although the prices fluctuate, mining and oil palm, they all fluctuate, sometimes high, sometimes low, but the trend itself is going up. The red one is the bank credit for this sector. So it goes up. This is the pressure on kawasan hutan, basically. This is nickel mining in South Sulawesi. This is in protected area. It's an open pit mining. It's one of the 13 companies that were given an exemption to mine in protected areas. So the background, it was first still forested, and then it's totally open. This is small-scale gold mining in Central Kalimantan. It's called Domfeng. They take it from the river. This is the changing landscape. So all the white sand were taken out from the river to get the gold. And this is a more progressive one. So it's very, very difficult to return to the, to return to the original condition. So, and this is a map. It is very hard to see because that is the fact that's happening. It shows the overlay between the Tata Ruang of the Central Kalimantan, 2003 Tata Ruang, which has not been endorsed by the Ministry of Forestry, by the way. The purple circles show oil palm in forest. The black circles show mining in forest. This is in East Kalimantan. The purple circles show oil palm development in forest. Black circles mining in forest, and a lot of these are overlapping with each other. This is also showing mining overlapping with oil palm in East Kalimantan. The purple circles mining in area under moratorium. The yellow circles oil palm in under area in under moratorium. So, but the government and the local government also know that this is an issue. Yeah? Recently, there are more recent initiatives. It's called RED, to mitigate climate change. So the government has put a target, 26% emission reduction targets, and about 84% of that target is going to be reached. The plan is to be reached from land use change and forestry. So, however, the RED initiatives is only in the preparatory phase. The RED architecture is not there yet, even at the international level. We have seen there's inadequate knowledge and understanding of the RED plus among sectors and governments. And this uncertainty in land status that we have seen is a big, big issue for any development, including RED. So if we try something else, how can we, how can we alienate development with conservation, such as RED? Both are necessary. It will only work if compatible with and complements economic activities or support local livelihood improvement. But is that enough? Will the money, for instance, generated by RED be enough to compete, with other priorities such as mining and oil palm development? So other developments so far, there is a policy called One Map policy. So all of the sectors are putting all their maps in the agency, the geospatial agency. So the Ministry of Forestry, the Ministry of Minerals and Energy, the Ministry of Agriculture, the local governments, even Aman, the Adat communities, they put all their maps in the Geospatial Agency in the effort to produce a one map. This is a big step because these sectors never sit together before. However, there is an issue. The Geospatial Agency does not have the authority to determine or to make decisions if there are different maps. For instance, if one area is a kawasan hutan, and then the district say, no way, this is not a kawasan hutan, this is outside of your purview, then who is going to decide? There is no agency that can decide for that. There's also some improvement in forest and land governance. There was an MOU among 12 sectors and the KPK for a more integrated approach in forest governance as a whole. But recently, even more recently, there are more complications. The Mahkamah Konstitusi, the Constitutional Court, has decided that Adat lands are now not state land, are excluded from state land. So they are excluded from the 70% of the kawasan hutan if they can prove themselves as Adat lands. But this process is still very long, but there are potentially further complications later. So what are the take-home messages? I think the first one is that natural resource and land management after 12 years of decentralization has not changed that much, has not changed fundamentally. Yes, there are some changes. Timber is no longer the star. The game changer is mining and agricultural development. However, some things still don't change. Natural resources is still the ATM for everybody, for local governments, for local communities, smallholders, for central government agencies. Accountability, we've talked about that yesterday a lot. Accountability, downward, upward, continues to be a major problem in the natural resource sector. Some initiatives, RED, for instance, may help, but certain requirements need to be met first for it to work. So, an important precondition, for instance, is clarity and the legitimacy of the status of the land and the established RED infrastructure. Thank you very much.
So next we have Sudarno Sumarto. Pak Dano is a senior research fellow at SMERU Research Institute and is a policy advisor at the National Team for Poverty. I'm going to have to look at my notes because I can never remember the name. National Team for the Acceleration of Poverty Reduction, or TMP2K. He'll be talking about explaining regional heterogeneity of poverty and social indicators, evidence from decentralized Indonesia.
Terima kasih for your kind introduction, Kate. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending this session. It's always grateful and lovely to be back in this beautiful campus. I did the first update about 10 years ago with your senior, Pak Gunawan Muhammad. Very cold at that time, and Hall Hill, Chris Manning. Seeing many old friends, not only those around this area, but also from Indonesia. I haven't seen Pak Benny for decades. He was my roommate when we were in Boulder, Colorado, taking English course about 25 years ago when I did my master. Great. First, I would like to terima kasih sekali to Pak Hall Hill, very kind, and Mas Budi for kindly inviting me to this very interesting conference every year. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Indeed, Pak, sungguh, bottom from my heart. And I would like to tell you my story. This is more of stories. Just take it easy and relax and ask me questions. Stories about the evolution of regional poverty in Indonesia post-decentralization, based on the work that I've done with my colleagues when they were at TNP2K as a consultant, working on this podcast that Scott mentioned with Robert Sparrow on explaining about the infrastructure gap. That was the first innovation. Grateful to AusAID for supporting that survey. Never been done before that podcast. Usually just looking at the quantity of data on the existence of SD, SMP, whatever. but doesn't tell you much. But that data actually is very beautiful because it also have the quality. If there is SD out there or Puskesmas, do they have running water? Do they have a toilet? So it's very beautiful. I think we have to promote that data because it costs a lot of money and top up from what PBS used to do. So I wouldn't take much time, Kate, don't worry, because this is a story again. So unfortunately, Mark, he is now moved to European Commission as one of the economists, and Laura used to work with me as my assistant. Unfortunately, Matt Poe stole her and is working for the bank. So that's the institution capacity building all about. So we build the bank institution. That's joking. All right, so let's just start with the motivation about why are we doing this paper. Of course, because Halil asked me to do so. But basically, just let's, Ibu Daju just mentioned about the merit of decentralization. Why we do decentralization? Yesterday we talked a lot about it because it was political pressure, but also it has some merit, in terms of, it's making the voice of the poor being heard, access of poor to basic services improving. But that's at least on paper. In reality, we know very complex about the way how the mechanic of decentralization work for the poor. And I just want to quote the studies by OECD in 2004 for in almost about 2,000 countries. Actually, the number doesn't look very good. It's only about minority, but 1/3 of the country was considered to be succeeded. And the majority failed miserably in terms of poverty reduction. Those countries that failed miserably in following decentralization with poverty, Bolivia, Brazil, Egypt, Sri Lanka, Vietnam are the cases where poverty increased post-decentralization. There are some attribution, but we can talk later about that one. And the countries that was reported have been successful in reducing poverty were Bolivia, China, Ghana, South Africa. Those are countries that has been reported to have a positive impact post-decentralization. And the report further elaborated that for decentralization to be successful, it has to have a strong commitment from the central government, and the local governments to have technical and financial capacity, and also check and balances. And this report, so I reverse second and third, those countries that reported to be successful has mostly middle-income countries and with literacy rate of about 50% and the existence of the open political process. So the Big Bang decentralization in Indonesia did not allow us to make a very simple counterfactual. What would happen had decentralization didn't take place? So basically the story is always about attribution, because there are many other factors contributing post-Suharto era. We have shock, we have riot, we have political turmoil in here and there. So how we gonna address this story? So instead of looking at before and after, we know that regions are heterogeneous, and the input, they all have the same treatment in terms of the, I'm not talking about RCTC, I'm talking about decentralization actually gave equal treatment to every district, but the way how district and also the initial condition matters. So we would like to exploit that story, why district doing better than others in terms of poverty reduction. So that's it, that's what we're trying to do about this paper. Outline is very simple, progress. This will echo what Halil and Matt already did yesterday. Very briefly, the second one I'll skip because Plain and Marcus and also Ibu Anne already talked lengthy about it, so will be one slide, very brief. And the third one is, I can talk many stories about what is the correlate or determinants of poverty that we predicted. We'll focus on the three important aspects. The first one is the income generating capacity, which basically is about fiscal capacity, DAU, DAK. Second one is on the delivery of public services and governance. Very difficult to find a good proxy of governance, so we'll just put some proxies. And then the third one is a bit controversial. I think that's I want to provoke discussion through this forum about TKPK. This is regional theme for the poverty reduction, just like national theme for the poverty reduction and the Vice President Office. This one is office created starting in 2005. We'll tell you the story later on. Very brief on the summary, takeaways on this one, and because I'm not still very sure about this paper, that's why I would like to come up with a follow-up research. That's what the researchers do. So then we can have another project. And So I know that many of you have already seen this picture. You know, my dear colleague Suhasil Nasara, Professor Suhasil Nasara has used this number a lot. We put it on this income, growth, everything. The story is that despite all of the critics, all of the idiosyncratic, I keep saying that all the time about that we are not doing great. Actually, poverty has fallen since the crisis. You know, in the peak of the crisis, poverty was reported. I've spoken this podium about 10 years ago with Pak Gunawan, 23%. Peak of the crisis in 99. Poverty continued to fall. And by now, as we speak, actually, poverty continued to fall by about 11.36%. Still off the chart, we are aiming at the 10% of our RPGM. But unfortunately, at the same time, inequality has increased, as Matt yesterday indicated also. Inequality measured by just simple Gini index. You know, this is you divided income by percentile and then see the coefficient of the Lorenz curve. Matt yesterday showed you about the growth incident curve. It's fit very well that actually, not that the poor are getting poorer and the richer are getting richer. The poor are also moving up, but slower than the rich. So, of course, this, I'm just talking about technocratically. Actually, inequality reaches the power of growth poverty reduction. This is just accounting. I have another paper on, you know, looking at the inequality over the last 20 years in Indonesia and what has been the contributing factors of the inequality are mostly education. Education contributed a lot. That's inequality in education that drive the outcome. This is a consumption-based measure of poverty. But the good news is this same story of Paul Hill and also Matthew Polk. If you plot this, horizontal line is the poverty headcount in 2005, and the vertical line is actually the change between 2005 and 2010. So we see a convergence here, meaning that district with initial poverty 2005 very high fell faster compared to a district with the higher. This is from 0 to about 60%. So this is area like Papua and part of Sumatra. This is the change in poverty between 2005 and 2010. Whether you annualize it or just between the 2 points, you will get the same result. But you can also tell the stories from this picture that actually the graph also illustrates significant deviation, and the general story is still the same, like what Hal Hill mentioned yesterday. There are still variation among those regions who did well. If you look at this one, you know, high poverty rate at the 2005 still very high in between the 2 years. So this indicating convergent or divergent. Convergent, but also there are some experiences across districts are still diverging. And here is the story again. Progress has been made, but still heterogeneous, a substantial variation across districts. I'll just give you that there are about 61 districts with poverty fell between 2005 and 2010 between 10 and 25% at point. But also these two areas where about 200 district quota with experienced poverty increased between 0 and 25 percentage point between 2005 and 2010. I would like to show you two pictures. That the second, and it's the first and the second highest district with poverty reduction took place in Papua and also Sumatra. But at the same time, the two districts with the highest increase in poverty are also in Papua. This is interesting, indicating that variation across and within regions took place. Now I would like to tell the story about what happened with Jogja now, because Pak Chris lives in Jogja. Over the last, nothing to do with you, Pak Chris, but the Jogja story doesn't look good. Between 2005 and 2010, actually poverty increased by about 3 percentage points. How about my towns in Semarang? Semarang, the same story. Semarang also poverty increased, but much lower than compared to Jogja. So probably it's time for me to go back and spend more time in Semarang helping the Wali Kota to improve the way our poverty is going. Okay, so very brief, this is a big bang decentralization. I think yesterday my colleague from the bank, Blaine Lewis and Marcos already mentioned about this one. Very hasty preparation and lack of preparedness, unclear division of labor. We are still working with same bureaucrat working for the new order government during Pak Suharto. They are not used to invent new ideas for poverty reduction. Basically, same old people working on at the local level. And the last one is on the pemekaran issue. Actually, decentralization encourage the pemekaran that will be discussed later. Even though it's not always bad, I think Matt to have different numbers, but we can discuss about that later. So what has been the evidence so far? I quote a couple. Of course, Miranti, I was involved in examining her thesis with Hall Hill as her supervisor. That's one paper that was reporting about the convergent, divergent issues. And the latest one is by my colleague from the bank, Scofias, actually only one single data, 2009, indicating that actually it was the mobile characteristic that drive the variation across region. What does it mean, mobile characteristic? This is about your education, your age, your individual trait instead of your physical attribution like condition of housing and etc. something like that. So meaning if you are a high school graduate and working in East Timor, NTT compared to if you have some level of education but working in Jakarta have a different return. And Hall Hill paper is about the variance in the poverty level, and he also warned us in Indonesia to be concerned about this inequality cost district because it can encourage a conflict. So we'll be very brief on the determinants. I said that there are many factors that we can discuss in this paper. The papers actually elaborated many stories about what kind of variable that we can try to predict, explain about regional poverty over time, post-decentralization. The first one is the income generating capacity at the local level. Again, it was discussed yesterday. The local income is still generated about 90% on average in 2001 from central, and 64% spending at the local are actually coming from the pusat, like pembantuan, DAK, kemudian deconcentration. Of course, the law also allows local to generate income, but most of the time, instead of generating more economic development, it's harming economic development. We did a paper also published in BIS on the local retribution and perda that actually it's do not create a better economic environment for the local government to grow. And this new law also allow local to receive more portion of the money through the natural resource sharing. The second issue that I would like to put on the table with regard to poverty at the district level is on the delivering of the public services. Again, this is related to the fiscal. I just would like to mention few fiscal abilities and technical capacity. With regard to fiscal, even if we have money enough in your district, it doesn't mean that it will be spent to things that will affect poverty or well-being. Just two examples. Mamuju compared with Badung in Bali, and by the way, Bali poverty fell faster than Mamuju definitely. So this is just ignore about the absolute number. Just look at the per capita. Actually, Badung spend about 50% more than Mamuju in terms of spending on health-related, education-related spending. On the technical capacity, again, I think it's. Yesterday we talked about internet, about lapor, about text message and things like that, but we know that it's some of the areas also hampered by lack of availability of electricity, sustainability of supplies and things like that. And spending mostly on wages, so not much money spent on technical know-how on how to work with the poverty pipeline. Accountability and the governance of decentralization. This is basically I would like to also put into the equation. No, I'm not talking about the equation. In the explaining the variation of poverty in terms of conflict, actually. Generally speaking, that it does not, accelerate conflict, but there are some cases where pemekaran is the case in point where actually decentralization induces conflict. Here are the picture that I think later will be discussed this afternoon by the colleague, Mamasa. This I took it from Tempo and also from Depkas. This picture of where conflict related to the pemekaran issues. Next, this is the one that I just would like to share with you on the TKPKD. So what is this all about? In 2005, the President issued a regulation on the formation of regional team for the acceleration, for the formation of coordinating poverty better. But it was under the PMD, and then there was renewed in 2008 to move from PMD to Babeda. And then again, after the establishment of TNP Duakar, the Vice President, President issued again a regulation moving the TKPK from the Bapeda to the vice mayor or vice bupati or vice governor. And with the job is to overseeing coordinating poverty related issues, blah, 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 blah. I have the Perda here very, very lengthy. Here is the distribution of the TKPK location. It looks very nice. You know, it's randomly distributed with the exception of the eastern part of Indonesia, Papua. And when it's very common in Indonesia, even the president sent an instruction, it's only by 2005, only about 35% the local established this office. And then by 2010, there are still about 20% districts who did not have this TKP office, mostly in mostly in Papua areas. And we don't have the information on the degree why how is TKPKD actually being institutionalized on the local level. Look at this, a very simple correlation that actually district which has established TKPK actually reaches poverty faster than the one that did not. And the more, the age of the TKPK establishment actually also had more power in reducing poverty. We'll talk about indigeneity later, but this is a very nice picture. I like it very much, and I don't know why. Why the KPK matters, that's why I'm here. I need your input. All right, so now, just 3 more minutes, this is the real story. So this is a district level panel data. This is actually, I stole it from the bank. So they did very well in constructing consistent time series data panel. We used the 2005 boundary. So it's very consistent, so we did not take into account the pemekaran here. So we just used right away 2005 consistently being constructed by a colleague from the Blaine teams actually. Pak Dan did this with the team. So what we are trying to do is to explain, this is a correlate, explain the variation in poverty reduction over a decade, 2005, 2010. And here are the variables that we are trying to look at it: economic development, socio-demographic condition, industrial condition. What we did first, we have bunch of variables, about 20 of them. Look at them and see the correlation metric if they are correlated among the right-hand side. So you will not see here your favorite variable like electricity, like infrastructure. They are all there. It's captured mostly by growth, economic growth, and also by urbanization. So I want to be non-traditional here, of course, the infrastructure is beautiful. I think we have to keep investing on that. Okay, what is the storyline here? 1 more minute. Poverty appeared to decrease more in a district with established TKPK, actually by 1 percentage point higher if they already established about 2 years, and additional 3 percentage point if that's already established about more than 3 years. The second one is a bit surprising here, that higher share of fiscal revenue is poverty reducing, but the relationship turned out to be nonlinear. Concave, it's up to some level, and then more money doesn't have any impact. This makes sense. If you look at Papua, you look at some resource-rich region, they keep getting much money, but it doesn't have any effect on poverty further. So this is good. 10 years ago, I also said about money matters in a good environment in this forum. So it's not about adding more money, but about the quality of spending. A large share of leaders with secondary education. I think this is consistent with my co-author study, Julia Tobias from Stanford, political scientist, did the social protection at the local, that actually lurah, kepala desa actually matters in how to proceed. A higher degree of educational attainment, nothing controversial about this one. Actually, everything being equal, the coefficient is about, let me check, about 1 additional years of schooling actually reduces poverty, additional poverty by 2.1 percentage point. Higher share of urban population, this is also not controversial, it's probably a necessary condition, but we have to worry about the future of Indonesian poverty is mostly going to be urbanized, as I mentioned. Major takeaways, consistent with the previous studies, I think that we have to focus on the regional output, economic growth, economic development, but we also need to worry about inequality. Inequality is rising. Daniel Suryadharma is going to move to CIFOR next week. Keep telling me, criticizing me, Darno, you don't need to worry about inequality because we do need to worry about the inequality, but addressing poverty is the same as addressing inequality. Actually, I saw that graph in the Vice President also about the inequalities rising. His answer is same as Daniel. He's an economist, so he said, it's a typical Indonesian, it's a resource-based export country in the short term, but in the long term we will prevail by investing more in education, and we worry, but I think we have to also be very rational in taking care about this issue. So basically what we propose is a sound economic policy, complement with the capacities at the local level to prosper and attack poverty. I also would like to show about, dwelling more on this take-up idea. I have the second study now being conducted, more qualitative. What is actually going on with this take-up story? Of course, this has something to do with the leadership, and also they already have planned before take-up was established. So that's the end of my story. Thank you very much.
That's very interesting. Now we're going to open up for questions. I'll take 3 at a time and ask you to introduce yourself first, and just please restrict it to 1 question. Start in the front. So the gentleman in the red, do you have the mic? Gentleman in the black there, and then the gentleman in the red, and we'll come back to you guys after.
Yeah, thanks very much. Craig Thorburn from Monash University. My question is for Daju. First of all, I want to commend you on your fortitude. I mean, it must be heartbreaking to come back 12 years later and give the same presentation, the same list of problems, and very little evidence of progress. And I just want to commend you. Belum juga putus asa. But my question is about red. I'm on record several years of being a kritik yang tidak membangun, in the words of Emil, about red. I've always kind of said, this is nonsense, it's not going to work. And that's the easy way out. But it seems now that maybe, IAFCP is over. Basically, AusAID, after having spent nearly $70 million, is pulled out. It's now become clear that the Norwegian 1 billion is not going to materialize. And it probably never was going to. A lot of the pilot projects, and things are sort of falling over in chaos. I mean, has RED already spent, was it just about sort of workshops and feasibility plans and things like that, or do you actually see that RED is eventually going to do something? Thanks.
Yes, Eric Albright from the Crawford School here at the ANU. And my question is for Ibu Daju. Firstly, thanks for a great presentation. It's pretty clear that the pressure on Indonesia's forests remains intense. And that means ongoing emissions. And yet Indonesia has made a pretty ambitious pledge to reduce emissions by 26 or even 41% by 2020, which relies heavily on reducing emissions from forests and peatland. Now, I find that hard to grasp, so my question is, do you think there's any way that Indonesia can achieve that emission reduction given what's happening in its forests and peatlands?
Yeah, thank you everyone. Terima kasih Bu Daju, Pak Domo. My first question is, I'm Dean, by the way, from Monash University. My first question is for Ibu Daju. Ibu Daju, a few months ago, like you already touched on your presentation, MK already ruled that customary forest has received their own status of the land. And will we be expecting any move from the national or from the district government and forestry management because of this ruling in the next few or several years? And following that, at the Legislative Council now, there is a process of RUU PPMHA, the law of recognition and protection of masyarakat adat? And how this will change or shape new forestry management in the country, especially on the licensing and concession. And also because MP3EI as well, like you already mentioned, how this will contradict or create more fuzziness in national forestry management in Indonesia.
I might have to leave it there, because we've already got heaps of questions to answer now.
Okay.
With Daju. Is that the end?
Can I ask one question to Pak Domo? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you.
Daju?
Okay, thanks, Craig, for your question. About RED, well, will it eventually do something? Clearly, the architecture of RED is not there yet, even at the international level. So the financial flow and everything is not there yet, and that actually influences the ways in which the national architecture is being created. But Indonesia, with all the support from the Norwegian money and everything, Indonesia actually has been in the forefront in terms of the national policy for RED. It has been a big, and it is partially the actor who has been appointed, Pak Kuntoro. Yeah? He is very close to the president, so the president really listens to him. Now there's even a RED agency that is at the level of a ministry, never before, and there's no such thing in any other country. So that's actually the commitment, at least the commitment. If we see on the ground, however, RED projects and activities have been quite slow. In the beginning, CIFOR has identified more than 30 pluses projects in various stages of development, very, very early, basically. Now I think it has gone down to about 20s and still as well in the preparatory phase. However, if there are some progress in terms of forest governance in general. Actually, RED has put forestry in everybody's mind, and notably in other sectors outside forestry. So every time this RED task force has a meeting, it invites all sectors, all related sectors. Never before sectors sit in the same room talking about the same issue. So I think one of the objectives of the RED task force is to improve tata kelola kehutanan. So it's beyond climate change mitigation, and in that sense, it has succeeded and has made a lot of progress, some progress in terms of the policy. For instance, the One Map policy. This was possible because of the RED, of all discussion and discourses and meetings and workshops about RED. Okay, for the next question, can Indonesia achieve the emissions targets? Well, we have a moratorium of forest conversion, primary forests and peatlands until 2015. It's an in-press, so we don't know what is going to happen after election, whether the next president will be committed to the same issue. However, the moratorium has actually made bupatis aware, that there is this moratorium, so they are more careful now in issuing of licenses. The next question is about the Adat ruling. Yes, this is potentially a very, very big issue because if Adat lands is not state land anymore, a lot of these are going to be out of the kawasan hutan. Now there are many palangisasi. There's starting to be palangisasi, plang, a lot of signs Ini adalah hutan adat, bukan hutan negara. You can see that already starting on the ground in the villages. Whether it will change the dynamics, we don't know yet, because there's a kafit there. The Mahkamah Konstitusi, the Constitutional Court, only annulled that one word, which is, it's state land. It's no more recognized as state land. However, it has to be, at the moment, it has to be, all the adat lands have to be determined and recognized through perda, peraturan daerah. So far there are only 4 peraturan daerah that recognizes specific adat lands. So you can imagine how many peraturan daerah. So the Bupati needs to acknowledge that that is really an adat land, there's no conflict, and there's still a lot of processes in between before it's going to be really recognized as adat land and taken from the kawasan hutan. I think basically those are the...
Let me just check with Hal. Do we have... Okay, okay. Oh, sorry, Pak. I'll go a couple of quick comments on that, and then we'll get back to that.
Thank you very much. Prioring my answer to some questions addressed to us, I would like again address my thanks to Indonesian Update Program, to Pak Hel and to Pak Budi also, for kindly inviting me to this meeting. I think this time is the first time ecologists invited to this meeting, I think. Yes, there are 3 questions addressed to us, and all of them are very difficult to be answered. The first question is concerning REDD, which you not optimized. That can be done. I am a little bit agree. We are challenging now many things in order to really can implement the REDD program in the world, in particular in Indonesia. The second question is how we can achieve emission reduction. Yes, this is a big dilemma for us in Indonesia because at one side we have to reduce emission through maintaining our forests, but at the other hand we have to we are facing miscellaneous problem against the forest. So at least we know our government now planning to a program. First is what we call as KPH program. That's through the program we divide forests into some small unit management, and in every unit we build a office with staff. And we hope with the small unit forest management, we can do forest management more effectively than before. And sorry, and I think that is the effort of our government to achieve emission reduction. Okay, thank you.
All right, we have time for 3 really, really quick questions, otherwise I'm going to have to cut you off. So I'm going to take Ross and 2 on this side, so the gentleman and the lady in front. And please introduce yourself and be really quick.
Ross McLeod from the Indonesia Project. My question or comment is for Sudarno. Basically, I think your most basic concern is about is decentralization bringing about poverty reduction, or can it do so? It seems to me that you made the point that almost all of the local government funds come from the central government, and so therefore the central government should be directing most or more funds to local governments where poverty is very high to begin with. We've not heard anything so far in this conference, and I don't think we're going to, about the actual formula that determines how much each local government gets. The rule actually says that local governments where poverty is high get somewhat more in terms of transfers, but the same law also says that local governments where regional GRDP is high get more transfers. And those two things are directly contradictory to each other, and so they wipe each other out. And what we find is there's virtually no correspondence of transfers with poverty levels. I think this is an important area for research and for policy advice. I'd like your comment on that. Thanks.
Okay. Do you have a mic? Oh, yeah, you've got. Go for it.
My name is Sri from Monash. I have a question for Ibu Daju. How do you think the influence of decentralization stands? Since I found that when you present your findings, it's more like a problem in national level, in central level. So how do you think that decentralization can influence to the better condition? And then for Pak Darno, I really want to, because before you say that there's a heterogeneity of the problems, but you said very quickly that the same treatment to the different situations to eradicate the poverty. Do you think that the program of poverty is much more in central governments or decentralizations? And I also want to know—
Sorry, yeah. We really have to—
the urban poverties analysis, the recent analysis from you. I just want to know, because Matthew yesterday talk about it. Thank you.
So, just the gentleman behind you, please. Yeah, one question.
Thank you. My name is Sade. I'm from Jakarta. Thank you very much, Ibu Daju, Pak Sudarno, Pak Ngakan, for the very good presentation. For me, I think the overall story of that you are telling here is positive, you know. But here and there are some nightmares, but I think it can be resolved, right? As you were saying. I just have one quick question, Pak, untuk Pak Sudarno. Does your study, did you, in your quality of governance, did you also study the size of local governments and their efficiency, and then compared that to the other local governments in Indonesia? And maybe that is one of the determinants of their success in reducing poverty. And also the result of your study, are you sharing it with the local governments, you know, so that other local governments know the best practices on how best to reduce poverty, and they can implement that kind of model, that kind of template in their own government? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to go first? Yeah.
Okay, the question was, how can decentralization improve the situation? I think one key word for that is accountability. Now there's no download accountability to the local constituents. But the problem is there's not also vertical upward accountability. So there should be both of them in order decentralization to work. That is the key element, basically, of decentralization. Without that, it's going, natural resource sector is going to be the ATM forever.
Thank you, Kit. I'll be very quick. Thanks for all the excellent comment from Pak Ros, Ibu, and Mas. I will start from you about this quality of governance. Did I also include the size of the staff or something like that? The answer is no. I think we only look at the size of the economy from the regional gross domestic product produced by Central Bureau of Statistics, actually. So I don't have that variables. We can put it in later on, but we don't have it. On the setting of local government, basically what we are doing at the NP2K, I just want to show you some picture. Actually, I have this. Can you allow me to stay? Because this is beautiful. So this is, I didn't put the request. So this is what they'll take up PKD. Actually, this idea of having a poverty toolkit was initiated by the now Vice President. It was Pak Budiono who, at that time, during the transition from Gus Dur to Megawati, was unemployed. We worked together with H.S. Dillon, creating what's so-called poverty toolkit. It's a kit for the local government how to understand better their region, their poverty, and then we continue working it with SMERU actually, and then we develop it. And now at the TNP2K, we also have this try to capacity building. And when they came to the office or we came to a meeting, actually we give them about the report card. Where are you in terms of the poverty reduction over the last 10 years or 5 years? So it's very stimulating, very good education. But this has nothing to do with my paper because this is after the creation of TNP2K, that's 2011. 2010, and my paper is 2005-2000. So I'm not claiming anything about the NP2K role here. I'm independent, I'm a researcher, so it's nothing to do with the office of the Vice President. This is completely independent. That's number one, very important. And frankly, when I send this to Pak Bambang Wit and Muhammad Iksan and show it to Pak Budiono, I don't believe that Darno's picture about the KPKD role. They're just kidding. Maybe it has something to do with leadership. They already have their plan, and then when they have a plan, when they have a good leadership, and then that's what happened when there is an impress about poverty, because I have so go back to Professor Hall Hill ideas. This is a dissertation and Rizal Malarangeng about ideas. Ideas does matter. This is all about ideas, about poverty ideas. Toolkits, understanding better. Why do we care about poverty? Is it good for the economy? Do we spend more on that's all about ideas. The ideas matters, and then it will bring you to action. You will tell your staff, do it or something like that. So I think this is more of the storyline. Urban poverty, yes, I think we are. That's my point about treatment. Is actually the decentralization is definitely one size fits all policy, but they have a creativity allow it to the local government. So it depends on how leaders. That's why leaders matters at the local. That's why we have Jokowi, we have Ibu Rustri, and by the way, I'm also a member of the Quality Assurance Bureaucracy. I have an interview with Pak Jokowi and Ibu Rustri from Surabaya about the way, and they are very unbelievable in terms of the innovation. Like Pak Dekarwo, for example, it's research-based policy. They instructed all the puskesmas to open after 4 in the village because mereka pada ke sawah. If you open in the morning, no one coming to your puskesmas. Instead, I want you to open starting at 4 o'clock. So that's very non-traditional way of development at the local level. There are some innovation. Lastly, Jokowi, by the way, also working with SMERU on the urban poverty, supported by Ford Foundation when he was the mayor of Seoul. But I didn't know him personally. Ross, yes, I think that's a good question. We have been trying. I think he is responsible for that formula. He is the mastermind of the first formula, including poverty, into the equation. You're correct. We have been thinking about this from time to time with Pak Marwanto, is now DG of the allocation. Also was my former roommate at Vanderbilt. Actually, we have been trying to, adjust from time to time with a need base or actually, but so far it's, there are some space that we need to improve about the allocation of DAU. Now it's not poverty alone, we also put the Human Development Index and also poverty cap and fiscal cap, and we have all the revised formula from time to time. But I agree with you, we have to continue doing, does it matter in terms of poverty, even we already put into the equation. So that's the next study, Ross. Thank you very much, Mbak. Terima kasih.
Running slightly over time, I guess it's an indication of what interest there is in these topics. So if you want to talk to them more later during the break, you're more than welcome to. So one more round of applause.